Today's video is a look at part two of the accidental safety talk I gave at the ABS 2022 convention. This one's about a loss of control in flight tube. It's not from a maneuver. It's loss of control in flight from basically, I think, spatial disorientation. It's a pretty amazing video, pretty amazing track. So stick with us on FlyWire. Hi, I'm Scott Perdue, and today on FlyWire, we're going to dig deep into this loss of control in flight. Loss of control in flight crashes happen in every phase of flight. There's not one particular one. And this one was unintentional flight in IMC. We're going to dig at the other end of the spectrum from the J35 that we reviewed. We're going to look at how to best mitigate the inherent risks in flying. It always seemed to be the top three: loss of control in flight, control flight into terrain, etc. And this one, unintentional flight to IMC. And anyway, that's what we're going to jump into. So what the heck happened? Before we talk about that, I want to note that the experience level of this pilot, in 2007, this pilot, along with a friend of his, flew the accident airplane around the world. Okay, so they set a world record. He's got a lot of time in the airplane. He's owned the airplane for something like 14 years, and he's had an instrument has had an instrument rating for most of that time. Right here. So on January 13th, 2021, this F-33A left Greenville, South Carolina, downtown airport, on a 30-minute trip to Columbia, South Carolina, at the Owens Airport, KCUB. The weather at Greenville was VFR. The weather at Columbia was IFR due to fog. And so that's a bit of a complicating factor. This is the final approach here. This is the extended center line, and this is the flight path to the crash accident site here. The preliminary report says the pilot requested IFR clearance en route. In my review of the accident at this point, I can't find evidence that that actually happened. I think it was assumed because of the weather. Radio traffic shows the pilot was cleared to 5,500 feet. It's not instrument IMC or IFR kind of altitude. At some point, the descent was made to around 3,000 feet. But I do not see where the pilot was on an IFR clearance or ever cleared for the approach to runway 13. From what I have seen, the pilot never switched to Unicom, and the prelim does not show it, and the radio transcripts I've seen don't show it either. Still an open question, my point of view. Hopefully the accident review is going to tell us something different. This is the approach right here, and the runway 13 approach. There are anecdotal reports that the airplane was on that RNAV approach, but I really don't see any direct evidence of it. Important points to remember here are Pfeffer at 1,400 feet, okay? And we're going to look at the flight track of the approach. This is the approach, Justin Pfeffer. This is the flight track here, 2,700 feet, and he's at 2,500 feet. Pfeffer is supposed to be at 1,400 feet, and he's at 1,200 feet, okay? And you look at this track, by any definition, it converges to runway 13. It's not following an approach. To me, at this point, it looks like the pilot was pretty much attempting a VFR entry into the pattern, and that is unfortunate. So, with this sudden turn to the right here, that leads me to believe that he's flying VFR, and he finally caught sight of the runway, so he's going aggressively for it while he can see it. And it appears that the airplane began to go around here prior to reaching the airport, which is right here, just off screen, because he got into that cloud. Okay, it's 200 feet. And what I haven't told you yet is the weather. The weather report at KCUB was a quarter mile in fog and 200 feet vertical visibility. That's pretty bad. So far, we don't know what the tops were in this area. Perhaps the final report's going to reveal that. So what I want to do is I want to take a closer look at, that's the weather report here, sorry, getting ahead of myself. I want to take a closer look at that flight path, and to do that, I'm going to zip through these things right here. I want you to look here for the altitude and airspeed, and in this box here for descent rate, okay? That's the ground speed here, this is the baro altitude, and that's the descent rate right here at the bottom, 320 feet per minute. So follow through with me on this sequence so you can see some of the wild swings, okay? Here he is here, 800 feet. He's descending 1,000 feet per minute. So he went 300 to 1,000 feet per minute in a couple of seconds. He's at 700 feet. He's doing 256 feet per minute. Okay. He's at 600 feet, 1,600 feet per minute. And switch. 400 feet, 800 feet per minute. Still at 400 feet, but now he's at 320 feet per minute. Okay, he's at 300 feet, he's at 1,000 feet per minute descent. He's at 300 feet, he's at 1,500 foot per minute climb. That's outrageous. It's a huge difference, okay? He's at 500 feet, but he's climbing now, he's doing 3,000 foot per minute climb. So this was in the turn. I see, that's why I say, I think he saw the ground. I know where I am. I'm familiar with the airport, and he goes for it, and then he goes, holy rip, I'm in the clouds. I can't do it. So then next one is 800 feet, descending this time at 800 feet per minute. So maybe you saw it again. And then this is the runway right here. He's here, the runway's there, and he says, okay, maybe I can make it. He's doing 2,000 feet per minute descent. In the cloud perhaps, and he says, I can't do it anymore. 700 feet climb now. He's doing 1,500 feet per minute climb. 128 per minute descent now at 700 feet. And then the hit here is at 600 feet descent now, but he's doing 4,000 feet per minute descent. Okay? The next hit, ADS-B hit, he's at 300 feet. He's descending. He's doing 7,000 feet per minute down. So fundamentally, he knew his airplane. But why did he do this? What was worth the risk? Note the temperature and dew point is the same. Basically, this flight path would be a poster child for an unstabilized approach, even for a VFR pattern, much less how to do an instrument approach. We knew that this pilot had owned this particular airplane for 14 years. He'd flown it around the world, and neither accomplishment is a trivial thing. Okay, I would think that it's safe to say that by and large, this pilot knew his airplane. He was experienced in his airplane. He was probably a fairly good instrument pilot. It's nice looking F-33, and he'd owned it for 14 years. And so I have to ask, why again? Why again? Would the pilot try so hard, risk so much to complete this flight in VFR? There's no way, because I don't think he was on an instrument approach. He couldn't be that bad. There's no way I'm going to speculate on the business or personal reasons for this decision. But I will fill in the blank on the weather report. Actually, I just said it a second ago, is that the temperature and dew point were the same. They're 3 degrees C. In other words, with visible or moisture present, that means there's icing in those clouds. That's at the surface, 3 degrees C at the surface. I think there's icing in those clouds. In my world, that's icing conditions, and you can't go there. Maybe not in yours, but it is in mine. We do know that the F-33A was not FICI equipped. It couldn't fly into known icing. I don't know if it had de-ice. Perhaps he viewed the attempt as a low risk compared to the legalities and risk of flying in icing conditions, believing that he could just go around with little to no risk. I just don't know, and I won't ascribe any particular motivation here for him to do that. But what I do know is the difficulty of transitioning from VFR flight, using outside world for orientation, to using instruments for orientation. Okay, that's absolutely not a trivial thing to do. It doesn't matter what your experience level is, 30, 40,000 hours, 20 hours, it doesn't matter. It's one of the hardest things to do as a pilot. And knowing your life hangs on the edge of a knife adds a different kind of pressure to that. That multiplies the danger on this particular scenario. I feel pretty strongly that the pilot lost control here because of spatial disorientation. You can see that in that go-around and all the wild swings in altitude and climbs and descent. Factually, we know that the pilot lost control of the airplane. And that final ADS-B hit showing the airplane at a 7,000 feet per minute descent, that's not controlled flight. So, just how did the pilot get into this predicament? That's the big question here. And I think, of course, spatial disorientation can and does often lead to loss of control in flight. It's particularly problematic. Rarely do folks survive this kind of loss of control in IMC, particularly when close to the ground. So I have a story for you, okay? I'm going to tell you a little story about my experience. I think I can speak authoritatively about this particular transition because I've been there. It happened to me. Okay, so this is a Phantom story. This is Phineas Phantom. If you've never seen Phineas or been associated with the F4, that's Phineas, my buddy. My event happened at a red flag sortie to the 70 series ranges above Nellis, which is in Las Vegas. Red flag is a combat exercise flown over hundreds of miles of airspace. It's really fun. It's awesome. And there's an area in this space that we call the big box. You probably know it as Area 51. We didn't know what was in there, but we knew that anyone who flew in there disappeared, and you didn't see them until, again, for weeks until you got home from deployment, and they were usually pretty chastened. There are usually over 100 fighters involved, and other airplanes as well, in a red flag exercise, a particular exercise, and they have morning go and afternoon go. And I once had the opportunity to command a strike package, and we call it a guerrilla, which is over 80 airplanes with red air, over 20 plus, et cetera. It's a big deal and puts a real world stress on you to prepare for real combat. That being said, the combat sorties I did fly were nothing like red flag. In other words, red flag's purpose is to put a lot of pressure on you. So combat is not as high pressure. Anyway, it goes without saying that you don't run a red flag guerrilla in IMC. And on this particular day that I was flying F4 on the wing, and somewhere on our way to the target area, they called a red flag knock it off for weather, meaning that the weather had deteriorated at Nellis, which is where just about everybody was coming from, and everyone needed to use their gas because fighters don't carry much. They need to use their gas for recovery instead of fun, so no burner. The vast majority of this red flag go flew down the west side of the big box, Area 51, and then right across Yucca Lake. And Yucca Lake is that place where they test nuclear bombs. They have done it above and below the ground. And you fly over there, you can see all the pits where they did under the ground one. And popping out of this restricted airspace, we're all stacked in a hold somewhere near Indian Springs. There are probably 60 or 70 airplanes stacked over 20,000 feet. And we had pretty much been in the clouds until we got established in the hold, and then started going in and out of the clouds in my flight. And I was having more and more difficulty hanging on the wing when we punched into the cloud. You go from really bright sunlight to a dark cloud in an instant, and your eyes have trouble adapting to that light change. And when we popped out of the clouds, my eyes would adjust, and we'd almost immediately go back in. Very dense cloud, and I inched closer to lead, watching the wingtip light. It was all I could see. And, that's not necessarily a good thing. You want 10 feet of wingtip clearance, and, when it's so dark, all you could see is the wingtip light. You're pretty close. And all of a sudden, I couldn't see it. So what do you do when you're in close formation with another F4, and I mean close, and you can't see it anymore? Oh, and you're in a turn inside lead, and there are literally dozens of fighters above and below you and ahead of you. And so there are rules for lost wingman actions for 2 and 4 ships, but not 70 stacked in altitude. So in an instant, I called out on the radio that I was lost wingman, and I was going to go enter a 30-degree bank turn and anchor, which is right here. I'm just going to keep turning right here at my present altitude. Okay? So then I tried to transition to instruments. I was in the cloud, and besides mountains all around me, there were these other airplanes, and you could say that I was probably a bit excited, but I couldn't see. I had trouble focusing on the instruments so that I couldn't find a level 30-degree bank turn. My eyes bounced around so quickly, I could only read the attitude indicator at a glance, much less the altimeter. And I called it basketball eyes for years, and then somebody lately has told me that it's a nystagmus. It's actually a thing, and not just me being weird. Okay, I was trying very hard to look directly at the attitude indicator, but without control of my eyes, they would rapidly look someplace else. And I couldn't focus on that. And that's disorienting in and of itself. Okay, I really have no idea how long it took to gain control of my eyes. And while I was trying to do that in the middle of the hold, I could hear the radar controller vectoring airplanes away from me. And I guess he did a dang good job, because I didn't hit anybody, and they didn't hit me. So I was just too busy hanging on by my fingernails to what reality I could hang on to. So that particular episode gave me a hard and fast perspective on what it's like to transition from using the outside world as your orientation to using a little itty-bitty instrument, 3-inch instrument, 3 feet in front of your face. Just what the hell does it say anyway? I mean, it's really hard. And I did another video on the worst IMC flying and what I think it is, and it's that transition. So for the pilot of 266 Delta Charlie, he was concentrating on dodging cloud and trying to find the runway. Unconsciously, he was still using the outside world for his orientation. This is my speculation. When he finally gave up the attempt to continue VFR and began his go-around, he did it with an aggressive turn. He rolled left, he was turning left, he was climbing, he was adding power and accelerating. All of a sudden, several different illusions hit him all at once, and the inner ear could not keep up. His brain was interpreting what the inner ear was telling it, and it did not match what the airplane was doing. That's spatial disorientation, and that's what happened in this final turn right here during the go-around. In the end, he did not transition to using instruments for orientation, and that's a problem. There's a critical time period when you switch from using your internal gyros to using the airplane gyros for reference. In this instance, he presented himself with a worst-case situation. This is virtually the same setup that happened to the pilot in the Kobe Bryant helicopter crash. I'm pretty dang sure this is pretty much exactly the same. Okay? So, I have confidence he couldn't handle it. Again, this is the flight path that he flew right up until the dart at the runway and the go-around. When I transition to instruments entering cloud, all I want to do is fly straight ahead. Slowly add climb as I can handle it. My world changes, or my world becomes the instrument panel in front of me. You focus totally on that. Okay? And if you delve into approaches that we fly, okay, I think you will see that they were designed with this transition and inner ear disorientation in mind. You notice there's rarely curved approaches. Okay, we don't, as a matter of fact, all the DME arcs are virtually gone. There's a few left, not many. It's not trivial that approaches are long and straight. Okay, and missed approaches begin with climbs, straight ahead, and then you turn. It's not all about obstacle clearance. Yes, that's a factor, but it's not all about obstacle clearance. So how do you mitigate the risk of Spatial D ruining your day like the pilot of 266 Delta Charlie? This answer brings me to aeronautical decision making. Okay, boiled down, you fly disciplined approaches, you fly stabilized, you don't try to sneak in or press the minimums, you fly by the numbers, and you practice it that way, period, dot. Okay, it's your survival, and you're human. You may be a superhuman pilot, better than the rest of us, but no, you're not really. Everybody's human. That's the problem. When you press the weather or minimums, or you let outside life dictate your decisions as a pilot in flight, you open a leak in your look bag. Okay, I got the 3-bag video, if you'd like to watch that. And when you least expect it and need it the most, your luck bag's going to be empty, okay? And that's just the way it is. That's life and the universe doing it to you. Trusting luck equates to flying accidentally. Shit does happen. And I'm going to have to tell myself on YouTube on this. We mitigate the impact of random events by training and flying by the rules. The rules are written in blood. Acknowledge the fact that each of us can make mistakes and fly accordingly. I call it flying intentionally. Don't make it up as you go along. Make everything you do part of a plan. Sometimes you're faced with a situation that you didn't include in your plan, like the J-35 pilot in the previous video. So try new things, but not on a whim, okay? Study, talk to others. Fly with an instructor first on those maneuvers that really hang it out that you haven't done before. If your plan is to make a short VFR hop and the weather turns IMC, either change your plan or continue IFR or abort the plan and go home, maybe, or someplace else. If the time constraint is so important to you right now, ask yourself, how important is it going to be tomorrow? What if you don't have it tomorrow? it won't be as important at all. So the question then is the risk worth of your life? I think as pilots we become comfortable in the seat in the air. I think this pilot, Delta Charlie's pilot, was comfortable in that airplane, extremely so. And I think that's a good and a bad thing. It's good because we have internalized the tasks required to pilot the airplane, and we can use our brain to think ahead. It's bad because sometimes we become complacent about the environment that we are actually in, and our perception of it is overruled by, reality and our perception don't match, and that's a problem. Reality wins. Reality always wins. For me, it comes back to the physics thing. To fly, we must be moving pretty fast. Along with velocity and with speed, we have more potential energy. And as humans, we have to manage those energy transitions because our bodies are not designed to withstand rapid decelerations. I don't want to really say graphically what's happening here, but hopefully you get the picture here. You may not realize your energy state. And that means you become used to it. The old saw about flying a Cub is that we'll fly just fast enough to kill you. Today, cars are built with very crash-worthy, and your chances of surviving a 60-mile-per-hour crash are pretty good. Airplanes, but by their very nature, are nearly impossible to made crash survivable, and even new airplanes. Some new airplanes have emergency chutes to address this issue, and there's other crush structures and things like that, but ultimately you can't really do that in an airplane. Too much energy. Old ones, in fact, like this one, are simply not designed with crashes in mind, and it's up to you as the pilot to manage that energy. Safety, or more accurately, survival, is the result of attitude meeting reality through reactions that we take as pilots. When you fly, fly intentionally. Make your decision as a pilot first. Your flight plan for the day took into consideration your outside life requirements. Done. Your decision as a pilot need to take into account the realities of managing your energy all the way to setting the parking brake. Add in a regular set of maneuvers into your training regime as a proficiency plan. Practice does make perfect, and it scrapes off rust. Try new things under controlled conditions, and I strongly suggest you take a UPRT course. There you can deeply explore stalls and extreme, unusual attitudes, and then you know at least what the edge of the world looks like. So you don't fall off it and not know what to do. Learn what you need to do if you fall off the edge of the world. That's the point of UPRT. You don't want to do it for real, and etc. So, I love flying. It's an ever-changing and ever-evolving challenge, and that's probably one of the reasons why I love it so much. I find it fun, and I think you do as well. Your best chance, I believe, comes when you fly intentionally. Best chance at survival. I don't think there's such a thing as accidental safety. That's why the name of this series is Accidental Safety. If you'd like to subscribe, there's a button below. It looks a bit like this here. And if you want notifications, hit the bell. I'd like to thank my Patreon supporters up here. I appreciate your support. It really helps when I'm out there in the dark, editing another video and trying to get it shot. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on FlyWire.